Welcome back, everybody, to Mets Daily. I'm your host, Jake Brown, at Jake Brown Radio on all social media. Make sure you smash that thumbs up on YouTube for us. We appreciate it. Over 1,100 subscribers. Thank you so much for your support. It's Tuesday, February 11th. Pete Alonso has yet to officially sign his contract because we're waiting for him to pass his physical, which they say will be done this week. So that's why there's been no Pete Alonso official announcement. Watch a Carlos Gomez situation comes up and he fails his physical. What drama would ensue? Well, Carlos Mendoza spoke on Tuesday, as we're just a couple of days officially from pitchers and catchers, but great to see a lot of the guys already there. And Mendoza addressed a numerous amount of topics that we'll get into right now, and one of them is a six-man rotation. I went through the rotation yesterday and the five guys and who could be that sixth guy if they decide to go that way. And, we talk about McGill, we talk about Griffin, Canning, Paul Blackburn as kind of the three guys to go for that spot. I'm very curious who ends up being the sixth man. McGill, listen, last 6 weeks he had some good moments, but over the course of his Mets career, it's just been a roller coaster with him that I don't know what you're going to get out of him. Griffin Canning's coming off a miserable season with the Angels. Maybe the pitching lab fixes him. And Paul Blackburn didn't really get enough starts, but he's been a quality number 4 or 5 for the A's and throughout his major league career. So I'm curious to see if Blackburn could get that spot. He doesn't really have great strikeout, stuff. He doesn't really have great put-out stuff, but he does get outs and he does put up a 4.5 or so ERA, which is considered a quality start. Brett Baty is going to get reps at not just third base, but second base. So an intriguing thing to watch there with Brett Baty, who's been pretty much a mystery for the Mets in terms of what is he. He's like a 4A player. He tears it up in Syracuse, and then he comes up to the big leagues, and he's not very good, and he doesn't play good defense. So I'm ready to move on from Brett Baty, but he will play spring training games at both third and second, and so will Luisangel Acuna. Acuna is a guy I'm really eyeing to get one of these last roster spots. He needs to be on this roster. I've talked about on here. He's a pinch runner. He's a second baseman. He's a third baseman. Mendoza didn't say that he would play a lot of center field, but I do still think that's an outside option for the Mets to put him in center field, and I just think the speed and what he brings to the table, he's got to be on this roster over Brett Baty. And maybe over Nick Madrigal. He mentioned Madrigal getting some starts. Madrigal has played short. He's the one guy outside of Lindor on the roster as a backup shortstop. God forbid something to happen to Lindor. If Lindor's healthy, he usually plays almost all 162 games every year. So Madrigal's really the only backup. So we'll see what happens there with Nick Madrigal if he gets one of the last spots as well. Or does Acuna play some shortstop and he gets the spot over him? Jose Butto will be a reliever. The hope for him is to throw 40 to 50 pitches if needed. I think that's the right move here. Jose Butto was a revelation, as a reliever. He was really good as a starter, which a lot of people don't realize. He was very good. He never gave up more than 3 runs, but I think his role as a long man out of that bullpen, if Clay Holmes can only go 5, to have Butto for that 6th and 7th and save a few other middle relievers for the next day is huge. It's really a trickle-down effect when it comes to Jose Butto. Jet Williams will get reps in center field and second base. Jet Williams is a name, if the Mets don't trade, to keep an eye on for maybe later in the year. He got up to AAA. He was at all 3 levels last year. He's just been injury prone so far in the minor leagues, but this is a guy that can steal 40 bags in a year in the minors. He did that in 2023. And he plays balls to the wall. He's a very interesting player in this Mets organization, one of their top prospects, but he needs more game action. So if he doesn't make it this year, it's because they want him to get more reps. So we'll see him get some of those reps in center and second. Tyler McGill stretching out to be a starting pitcher. We just talked about that. I think that's the right move. I think he's got a heavy pitch arsenal in his selection, which makes it intriguing as maybe a one-inning guy to the bullpen. But I think the Mets like him more as a starter. So if he's not part of the rotation, my guess would be is he goes to AAA. Ronnie Mauricio, who I'm excited about, he won't play at spring training games until mid-March, and I think he's still getting his legs under him. I think that's probably the right move for the Mets. Don't get him into game action too early. But I think Ronnie Mauricio at some point this summer, maybe even earlier, will get up here with the Mets and be part of this roster. Francisco Lindor, one thing that is secure is Lindor is going to be the Mets leadoff hitter. So there's not, we don't know the rest of the order. We assume Soto's too, and then TBD. But Mendoza basically said Francisco Lindor will be the Mets leadoff hitter. And also, the Mets optimistic that A.J. Minter will be good to go for opening day. And Minter coming off that offseason hip surgery, he wouldn't say it was definite that he'd be ready for opening day, but it feels like the Mets are in good spirits about A.J. Minter being a part of this team. And listen, A.J. Minter is like the Mets setup man right now. He is a critical part of this Mets roster, and I think the Mets are hoping that he kind of hands the ball off to Edwin Diaz a lot of nights when you have a 1 or 2 run lead. It's Minter and then Diaz at the back end of the bullpen. So that's basically what Mendoza said. Nothing too groundbreaking. Kodai Senga had an interesting comment and listen, Kodai Senga always has jokes, and I love that about Senga. He's just got a great sense of humor. He seems very zen. I'm very pumped to see Senga back in the mound with the Mets. He was asked about the Dodgers signing so many top Japanese players. He said, of course, I would love to have some of them on the Mets, but the climate's nice there, and I think that definitely plays a part. And then he followed it up by saying, we need to build a roof. Listen, preach, Kodai. I think we talk about that at MetLife Stadium, Citi Field, Yankee Stadium. It would be tremendous if there was a roof. Now, weather doesn't impact the Mets a ton, but those rainouts and the double headers and the Mets, with Atlanta having that last game of the year, a day after the year, the double header, it's just a pain in the ass with Mother Nature when you don't have a roof. So I don't blame Senga for saying that. And, Senga's been healthy. He said he's been fully healthy since early January, and he's expecting to have a good year. And listen, I think a lot of people, when they talk about this rotation, forget that how good Kodai Senga was in 2023. Just look at his numbers. He only made 1 start in 2024 and then try to come back for the playoffs. But this guy was an all-star in 2023. And not only that, he had 202 strikeouts and 166 in the third innings. This guy was a dominant pitcher and a sub-3 ERA, 2.98. He made 29 starts. He had a 12-7 record. His WAR was over 4. This is a stud in the Mets rotation, and everyone wants to hate on this Mets rotation, but if Manaea replicates last year, Peterson replicates last year, and you got Senga healthy, he is one of the best pitchers in baseball, and I think a lot of people aren't understanding that because they're looking at what happened when he played hurt in the playoffs, and they're like, oh no, Senga is an elite starting pitcher, and the Mets went as far as they did without him. Now he's back in the fold, and I think it's time people start realizing Senga means business. And I think a lot of people want to call him injury prone because of what happened last year. The calf injury was a freak injury. He came back from that. I know he took a while to come back from his injury from before the season, but to call a guy injury prone because he missed 1 of 2 years, it's just too small a sample size to make that assumption about a pitcher. And man, I cannot wait to watch that ghost forkball at Citi Field. That was, the K counter, the ghost counter. It was remarkable. Senga, the whole Senga now noise. It's going to be Senga Day once again in Queens. And let's hope he can stay healthy because I do think this rotation needs him. This rotation needs him more, I think, than last year's rotation. I really do. And they need him to be that 7-inning guy. Clay Holmes is probably going to be a 5-inning guy. Montas, 5 innings. Manaea, Senga, got to be your 7-inning shutdown starting pitchers. So Senga's back, baby. And he's back like a lot of the Mets from the 2024 team is back. And, we'll be watching 2024 Mets yearbook on SNY tonight. It just aired on SNY. We'll be watching it for rain delays for years to come. We'll be watching in 2025 rain delays. A lot of times when there's a rain delay in a Met game in SNY, you change the channel. But if they play 2024 Mets yearbook during the rain delay, a lot of people will be tuned in. And, I think it's special that the Mets here are bringing back a lot of these 2024 OMG Mets outside of Jose Iglesias, obviously. They're bringing the band back together. It was a roster that worked. It was a team with great chemistry that worked. And, the OMG Mets were special, and I brought it up on here. It was a team that meant a whole lot for me personally. Like I've said on here, being laid off from the New York Post end of August, moving the same week from Astoria outside of the Philly area now with my dad, it changed a lot of things. It basically turned my life upside down. And it was a rough time. It was a very rough time. So what the New York Mets did for me, and I think obviously the whole fan base, but what they did for me in September and bringing me back in October, going to every home playoff game and raising my spirits during a dark time where, we didn't know what the future was, career-wise, anything. And the Mets said, hey, we'll bring you back. Keep coming back. Then they play the Phillies in the playoffs, and 15 minutes away from where I'm living, I got to go see my Mets in Philly. It was like a sign from the heavens above. And, I think it's important that they bring a lot of these guys back because they did gel, and guys did love playing here. And as you look at 2024 OMG Mets versus the 2025 Mets without OMG Jose Iglesias, who is still out there, we'll see if he's added. Iglesias gone, Severino gone. Those are the big ones. JD Martinez in the clubhouse, I think, is a big loss, but he really tailed off in the second half. But, you look at some of those guys who are gone, it's a lot of addition by subtraction. Drew Smith stinks. I don't think anyone was comfortable with Drew Smith in a game, and hopefully you'll never see him in a Mets uniform. DJ Stewart did not belong on a major league roster. Eddie Alvarez was a fun pinch runner, but wasn't a hitter in September. Harrison Bader was good, but again, he tailed off and was not a good hitter. Phil May toned down the stretch, imploded. Adam Ottavino was unwatchable. Alex Young was a fringe piece. I got nothing to say bad about Alex Young, but he's a DFA candidate. Josh Walker, he got rid of. He barely pitched, wasn't a big part of the team. Brooks Raley, I do think is a decent size loss, but again, he didn't pitch last year because he was hurt after the first week. So that's one guy I'd like to maybe see back. So you have Minter and Raley. But otherwise, a lot of those losses outside of Iglesias, Severino are not the biggest of deals. And then the additions to that major league roster: Juan Soto, AJ Minter, Clay Holmes, Frankie Montas, Jose Siri, Nick Madrigal, Griffin Canning, and Jared Young, which he probably won't make the roster. But those are the big additions. So it's a lot of the same players on the 2024 Mets as 2025. And I'm excited to see, the band back together. A team that special is back. And you might not have Candelita in the fold, but a lot of those guys are back, including a guy like Jesse Winker and Ryan Stanek. Time to get fired up. We'll be talking all about it here on Mets Daily. Enjoy Mets Yearbook. I'll be watching that. And, we'll have more news and updates tomorrow. Guests are coming up. Within the next week, you will see the first guest of Mets Daily. We thank you. Hit subscribe. Hit share the channel. Smash that thumbs up below. Comment below. What do you think about what Carlos Mendoza said? What do you think about Kodai Senga? What do you think? And let us know your best comments, because tomorrow we have a mailbag, a hump day mailbag, and we'll read your top comments on tomorrow's Mets Daily. I'm Jake Brown at Jake Brown Radio. We'll see you on a hump day tomorrow right here on Mets Daily. Thanks for watching.